I tell you, I, this name of my podcast, as you know, is again for the first time, and I feel it. I want to cry. I'm happy. Um, Tommy, it's been. I don't want to say how long, but I want to say how long. It's been forever. Tommy Bayiokos is just an amazing individual, and you've seen him in many a television show. You've seen him in many a film. You'll continue to see him in many of that stuff. We're going to talk SAG. We're going to talk the actor strike. We're going to talk about drumming. One of the best drummers around. The drummer for Laura Branigan. And I tell you, and the work that he did there. And this is not a let's spill tea, no tell, motel kind of stuff. But he was in the relationship with Laura Branigan when she had her death. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about this very unique place called James Madison High School, where we both went to school at the same time. And Tommy, God bless you, and thank you for being my guest again for the first time.
Thank you, Darren. It means so much to me. Who would think our years in James Madison and
That's right.
through social media, here we are.
Oh my God! Well, and it's so interesting, and we are so blessed to live in a time where social media can happen. Because I want to say what you've been doing for the last 40 years, but I know, whether I see you on television, see you in the movies, listen to what you've done. How are you, my friend?
Well, Stanislavski said there's no small roles, only small actors. So
yes,
whether you're saluting Tom Selleck and saying yes, sir, or I remember season 4, I had a day player role as Santa Claus. And man, we were in front of Radio City, the crowds, and I was ho-ho-hoing.
Right, yes.
And man, that was like a $900 payday and the residual and syndication. So again, every role, whether you have 20 pages or one line, and you 5 under 5 lines,
right?
You bring your A game and you work hard and work on the craft, and the work speaks for itself.
You churn out wonderful work, and you're out there on the picket lines. We'll talk about that separately, but I want to talk about the grind, because it's so easy. There's so many negative people out there who might say, well, after this long. For example, I'll just talk about me, right? I mean, I didn't hit my stride in podcasting, whatever success that has brought, until I was in my mid-50s. So many people, that's a young person's game. Well, BS, I'm thriving, and you've had success for many years, and we're going to get into all of that. What keeps you moving and creative, and that whole, talk to me about that vibe, man. Could you see it in your face?
I think looking back, I have to credit my late band leader and ex-girlfriend, Laura Branigan. I think what I learned from her, you can't learn in any university or a class, conservatory. I really learned.
Let's unpack that. Tell us, please.
I just learned the ins and outs of show business. And we had so many deep conversations pre-social media and pre all this hype. And I can honestly say that any success I've had these years, and transitioning more so, especially with my last 6 principal roles, I have to credit Laura and the focus. And she taught me a lot about showbiz. And I think we have to just credit her. And
now, for those who don't know, you were her drummer for her band.
I was actually percussionist. I was
a percussionist. I'm sorry, a percussionist. Yes. No.
Which is the drummer.
Apologies. No, but my apologies, because I like to be accurate. No, this is good.
So, but I didn't know the drum part, so I was a percussionist, which was actually a better slot, because I was a frontman percussionist, and I got to flavor her music, and I knew the drum parts, so it was a collaboration.
So how did that happen? Let's walk me through this whole thing. Walk me through how you became that, and then if you can tell our audience, what you learned from her, that legacy that you continue to learn that made you successful since.
Well, I think in hindsight, I knew of her since 1998. We established a rapport. My Brooklyn College buddy, guitarist Matt Castle, joined the band. And he was always trying to get me in. Once one of our own gets in, then he tries to bring in his
Sure.
people. And the band was rehearsing around the corner where I used to bartend at a Greek restaurant called Molivos near Carnegie Hall.
Ah,
So
beautiful.
the band was coming in. I was hooking them up with drinks.
Sure, sure.
And she would write me letters, Tommy, I heard about your drinks. And then one fine day, it had to be about late 2000, I come to my work on a Saturday, and my pal Jason Corey, who now owns the Immigrant Bar in the East Village, he says, Tommy, Laura Branigan's at the bar with Matt Caslow. I look over, I started my shift, and we connected, bam, right from day one. She was beautiful at the bar, and we connected, and we had a really deep conversation. And then from there, it was just...
No, and I have to stop you right there. Were you, I mean,
course.
since you've been around stars your whole life, but were you intimidated? Like, I'd be worried that I don't have a game to say hello and to, to talk to that person.
To be honest with you, I think being raised strict Greek in my childhood and having lived in Greece part of my childhood, I kind of did not know much about her. I knew she was a singer.
All right, good.
And I think that worked to my advantage. That really did me good because I got to treat her normally. And that's what she respected. And one of her things that she used to tell me, Tommy, just be yourself. Just be yourself. Right. And I carry that mantra whether I meet, I'm working for Frankie Avalon on a plane or playing in Radio City with the Rockettes. I come in with the attitude and the mindset, I'm just going to be Tommy. I'm just going to be myself. Yeah, and I think that gets you a lot further. And just be genuine, be yourself, and it's on autopilot,
See, for me, it was a little bit different because, I mean, we both went to the same high school, same college. I played football. You were playing, your instruments. And I then went into bouncing and private security. And thus, that's where I met some of those people, and their personal bodyguards and stuff. So it was easy for me because it was work. You meeting them socially, I mean, exactly. I would not have that game. I'd be like, I don't know, it's just I'm waving over here. Come on, go everybody.
I remember when Laura and I, the last show we did, we opened up the Italia Festival in Boston for the Commodores.
I'm up here now.
And I mean, the furthest thing from our mind was the Commodores. We were like, what are we ordering for food? What are we going to eat?
Of course.
What kind of wine are we going to have afterwards? Where's the party?
Of course.
It was really, really a special chapter in my life where I learned a lot. And again, I have to credit her for my recent successes these years in film and TV and transitioning,
And what are some of those takeaways that you can share that you did learn?
Wow. I think I experienced that's a very good question. I would have to say true love.
Right.
I think true love happens in our lives once in a while. It's not planned. And when you experience that, which happens, I really believe, once or twice, if you're even lucky in your life, where the love just takes you over. You have those jitters, genuine. I mean, that's a special thing. And I think being friends for 3.5 years before we took that leap of faith was special,
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, and that just adds to it when you're friends first, right? And it just, because it's so organic.
There's a beautiful foundation that just happens naturally.
That's beautiful.
And, yeah. So I hope to, write all this down at some point. And, we've been working on a biopic these years with my writing team, and the strike set us back and the pandemic, but we're back on the saddle. And I was around award-winning writers in SAG Writers Group, and I would read them scenes and I had them crying. So the truth is always the same. It's up here. And I think that's one of the goals this year, is to finally finish that draft and get it out there.
What you care to share, and what caused her passing? There's so many different thoughts, and I've heard an aneurysm. and
Yes.
I've heard, and I will say, without going into any detail, I had a health scare,
Hmm.
and I thought of her,
Yes.
and because some of the things that they said she was feeling,
Hmm.
uh, I was like, you know what? I used to have white coat phobia,
Right.
and yeah, I'd be fear of doctors. I said, no, I got to go, and I'm glad I did. That's all I'll say. So, tell me what happened, if you don't
Yeah,
mind sharing.
aneurysm ran in her family. She was
Mm-hmm,
experiencing head pains.
mm-hmm,
She was supposed to go to a doctor. I yelled at her. I said, Laura, if you don't go to the doctor, I will drag you there myself.
mm-hmm,
And just that whole week, and she was nervous about going to the doctor. And she called me a day before too. She said, Tommy, I'll always love you. Don't ever forget that. I said, Laura, what are you talking about? You're going to go to the doctor. You're going to be fine. And then a few days later, Connie Baxter Cameron, Connie Baxter, who lived next door to Laura, called me at 10 o'clock in the morning.
mm-hmm,
And the housekeeper, Magda, found her. And at that point, we went out there. And then her brother, Mark, joined
mm-hmm.
us afterwards. And it was probably the saddest day of my life.
I'm sure.
I
I'm
mean,
so sorry.
no, no, it's okay. I mean, I could talk about it freely. I've
Mm-hmm,
said the same thing a million times, a million different ways.
mm-hmm,
And it took me a long time to really see clearly and then
mm-hmm,
to make sense of what happened and then move forward the way she would have wanted to. So,
mm-hmm. Oh, sure. And her music is memorable and resident. And I say that there are people our age, and there's people my daughter's age and my son's age and younger. I mean, they know her music. I mean, we talked about it last week. I mean, you can't be a St. Louis Blues fan and not think Gloria, right? I mean,
yes,
what is
I
that
have a,
like performing live? Talk about that.
I'm going to share a story that very few
Sure.
people know, and I'm going to get this out there. I went to one of the holiest places in Greece called Meteora prior to the St. Louis Blues and the return of glory, so to speak. And I made several prayers. I mean, for my mom, who I lost New Year's Day, 1976, my dad,
Sorry.
and I thank you, Darren. And I made a prayer for Laura, and I asked God, and I wrote it down. And there's a little cave with notes. And again, spiritual. We're in like no man's land in Greece, up in the monasteries.
Right.
You could. The clouds are like right there. It was just you felt it. And I wrote a note, and I asked God. I said, if you could send me a single, a sign that
Mm-hmm.
Laura's okay. And I threw it in there. I made my prayer. When I get back to the States shortly after,
Right.
bam, play Gloria, the St. Louis Blues from last place. They went to first place. We
Yes.
went back on the charts. It it was unbelievable. And I went to the Jack's Bar actually, and I knew they would win in Game 7. Why? Because Laura and I, lastly, her last gig was in Boston, and I said, you know what? Laura loved, was a, not the drama queen, but she was a big fan of the dramatic.
Of course.
And I said, no, they're not going to
And
win.
by the way, and so are we. And so are you and I, right?
Yes. I said, they're going to win in style in Game 7 at Boston. Why? Because that's where Gloria was lastly performed.
Right.
When
Right.
Laura and I went, we flew out there where she
Mhm.
performed the tracks to open for the Commodores for the festival that weekend. So I called that from day one. And then I went to the Jack's Bar in
Mhm.
Philly on the invitation, and man, it was electric.
That's
So
beautiful.
that was the sign. So I asked God for a sign, and boy,
Beautiful.
give me one. You can't make this up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
16, 17 years later, for the whole Branigan thing to be back,
Mhm.
in the world stage was like, wow.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So I'm a big process person. Listen to my podcast. I like to talk to people about process. So what can you share without giving away your own secrets about your process of finding these roles and a little different? I mean, you're that guy, right? I mean, I've seen you. You played whether it's the bus driver, right? Whether it's no, I'm serious. The court
With
officer.
Forrest Whitaker.
Yes,
A few lines in that film. Yeah.
and you know this, and I'm not blowing smoke. if you didn't have the guts, if you didn't have the gumption, if you weren't a mensch, to use a word that we both know from New York, they would not have you even try out for these roles. You have a pedigree now that makes a lot of sense to hiring agents, to actors, and first of all, what's your process to get there, and what's that like?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's all in the work. Welcome. I think, there's no one set way to act. You have to really introduce yourself to all these techniques and processes, and just take what works for you. When I studied with Win Handman, he had the character interview. So if I was to play, let's say I get cast in Aaron Sorkin's A Few Good Men, and I'm playing Guantanamo Bay, command colonel in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Again, a character interview. How do I take my coffee? Where was I born? What's my favorite color? Who was my wife? How many kids do I have?
So you build that backstory yourself?
Yes, you layer, and then of course you can layer with imagination. And again, know the lines, inside and out like the palm of your hand, and play with them. And again, build the backdrop, build the character. And again, there's no one set way. Sometimes I'll make a substitution. I'll substitute the magic as if. Sometimes I'll use sense memory and replace it with a backdrop. So, and again, you always want to do it differently. I mean, when I was on Off-Broadway Murdered by the Mob, I played the killer. And I killed all the Goombas and had the big 5-page monologue in the end. And
like the neighborhood.
Exactly. And sometimes I cried because they killed my father, right? Sometimes I didn't. So some actors could cry on a fly. I remember Mel Brooks. I was on set years ago, and he didn't cry every take. Tears, and he kept on putting tears in his eyes. So every actor is different, but sometimes I cried. They killed my father. Sometimes I didn't cry, but if I did the substitution and I wouldn't tell you or anybody, as part of my private process. I learned to talk slower. I learned to take your time. When I studied with Win Handman, every time we got up to do a scene, Tommy, whenever you're ready, and I could take as much time as I want. The important thing is to find the truth in the character. And as a matter of fact, I'm really happy to announce that I had a theater run a few years back of Eleanor Duse Dies in Pittsburgh. And I just got the call that this year is going to be the 100th anniversary of Eleanor Duse. And the cast ensemble is going to be reunited, and we're going to perform.
Oh, beautiful.
Audition.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So
beautiful.
As Benito Mussolini, it's a dark comedy. I mean, you're not going to recognize me. I stick with an accent. I transform. So it's all the work. It's all the work. Yeah.
So now
you have to exercise it, Darren. You have to exercise it.
So here's a question you might not get too often. Maybe you do. But I've always found this interesting. Let's talk post-game. Let's talk post-performance, post-show, post-movie, post-television show. So you find it hard to walk away from that character? I mean, the one that instantly comes to mind, for example, is the Joker. Jack Nicholson said his Joker was tough to walk away from. I mean, people that believe that led to Heath Ledger's bad experience at the end of his life. Have you ever had a role that was kind of hard to shake?
Yeah. I mean, at heart, I'm a method actor. And the way you describe Jack and the Joker, he's a true method actor. James Gandolfini comes to mind.
Sure.
Putting rocks in his shoes.
That's right.
And to be pissed off all the time. So method acting, it takes its toll. So my last role, where I played Drayton in the film Halfway Home, which won a few awards, by the way, in the film festival circuit.
I wanted to ask you about that, but we'll ask about that in a minute. I want to hear about it.
Yep. And I had 8 pages of dialogue in the end, and I tied the whole episode together, the story. I played a sinister cop, Drayton, and he was bad news.
Mhm.
And I found it took me months, not that I was sinister to other people, but I had an attitude of sinister that I had to
Sure.
really catch myself. Wait a minute, turn that switch off. So it can carry over if you're not careful. Yeah.
Let's talk about that project right now. I was going to ask you what's going on right now, what people could see you in certain. So please go ahead, talk about that.
Halfway Home is a short film produced and directed and written by Michael Newman. And it's based on true events. And I play the role of Drayton,
Mhm.
who's a sinister cop. And we won 2 film festivals already. We're
Oh,
submitted
beautiful,
to 5
beautiful.
other reputable ones.
Mhm.
And it's creating a bit of a buzz.
We
And
like
it's
that.
probably one of my better roles. And I think you're only as good as your last gig,
Oh,
whether
sure.
it's music or whether it's acting. So I'm pretty proud of that role. And already it's leading to other things. Actually, I'm reading another script that's The Cat's Out of the Bag about Sally the Pants, the true story of Sally the Pants based on true events. So
Nice.
we had a meeting with actor John Frieda, who's going to play Sally, and Sonny,
Oh, beautiful.
and he flew from Vegas to meet with us.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
it's in development, and again, I've been there, done that, where you have a project in development and you hope it flies, and fingers crossed. But there are risks, but you have to begin it. It's a chance, but a worthy risk.
Oh, well worth it, I'm sure. And there's a lot of starts and stops. And as you know, through the podcast, I talk to some people. It's tough, and you better hurry up and then wait, and then hurry up. It's just part of the process.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about the strike and what went through. And I don't think people realized how important this strike was and how great for the actors and for the hard workers every day that you did what you guys did, because it was not easy. And talk a little bit about that, please.
Well, I think in life you have to turn lemons into lemonade. And for me, the SAG-AFTRA strike was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I got a chance to reset myself, the
Mhm.
direction of my career, my chops, honing my craft.
Mhm.
I signed with a new commercial agent,
Beautiful.
relationships that I had, and so many relationships from the Laura era that I have, but I just didn't maintain for whatever reason. So I got a chance to really, I signed with a commercial agent in addition to my theatrical agent, which was
Mhm.
great, Cynthia Saldana.
Mhm.
Um, I met a lot of good people at SAG at the writers' strike at the picket line. Writers, actresses, actors. I made some good friends, which was
Mhm.
great, and I got a chance to play the drums a little bit. um,
That's great.
yeah,
Speaking of
that was a
drums,
lot of fun to play the drums and to go back to my military snare drum, marches from high school, and so I got a chance to, instead of playing Brazilian and funk, I got a chance to, review my military marching chops.
you know, and again, I'm definitely going to have you back. I want to talk to you though, real quick about the times move quickly, right? I can't believe it. About you and I, with everything that we're doing, we're just teachers at heart. We both teach. I mean, talk a little bit about you teaching in the school, and there must be you must feel so much pride when you see them get it. And the person that really doesn't get it, who's trying and enjoying himself, that's a win also, isn't it?
It's a win-win, agreed, Darren. And to teach is, you have to give back, and it's
Hmm.
cliche, but the feeling, the fulfillment is so visceral.
Hmm.
I have a roster of 21 students at the Bay Ridge School of Music,
Hmm.
and I have adults, I have kids, I have a lawyer, I have a bar owner, I have all kinds of a diversity of students, and it just, when you teach, you're really learning or kind of going back to perfecting stuff that you learned. Um, I mean, I was teaching one of my students the other day, and I just thought of, wait a minute, I shook Buddy Richard's hand in 1984 at Lincoln Center, which probably changed my life. Um, so you're constantly going over stuff, you're constantly going over the basics, and if you could teach it, you could do it. And like Michael Jordan, he could do a 3-point shot, and he could do the basics. So a professional is somebody who has mastered the basics: single stroke,
Right.
double stroke, paradiddle, radimacue, triple radimacue, flam tap, all these rudiments. Um, uh, uh, so much content I learned at the Drummers Collective from my late teacher Kim Plainfield, mentors like Lee Musica.
Mhm.
Uh, it goes on and on. So teaching is it it's great. It's great, and my students, the one thing I try to bestow on them is to practice and to be diligent. And remember, if you're not practicing, somebody else is.
That's
So
true. One of your beautiful, I follow your social media every day, you know that. But I
thank you.
love, and you're Karen Carpenter. She was a pretty darn good drummer, wasn't
Oh
she?
yeah.
I did not know that. And my gosh, she could really play.
Again, thanks to social media. No, Buddy Rich praised her, and you see her holding
Yep.
the hand's traditional grip, and she had the drums set up the same way as Buddy. And again, the true test is, when you listen to Karen, you just shut your eyes and listen.
Mhm.
And then that takes, oh, she's a female, she's this. That takes it all out. And just shut your eyes and listen. And yeah, the proof's in the pudding.
I,
It's
I
great.
I always defer to drums when I talk percussion or some other things. I mean, my wife's cousin's dad is Billy Coughlin, the great jazz drummer.
I met Billy at the
Oh,
Bruno.
beautiful!
Yes.
Oh,
Oh
beautiful!
yeah,
Wow.
we had a
Well,
great
could
laugh.
you
Yeah,
really short the connections we have?
the original fusion drummer.
Yes, very good. And in fact, his daughter was at our house not too long ago. Yeah.
Send him my
So
best.
I definitely will. So before I ask my next question, we talk Buddy Rich. I hear people say fast and this and that, and everybody says he was the best. What made, in your opinion, what made him the best?
um, he was just, I mean, you look at guys like Dave Weckl, Gene Krupa, Tony Williams,
Mhm.
Billy Cobham, all great drummers, Steve Gadd, musically great drummers, but Buddy Rich, his technique, his chops, and musicality, a total sum,
Mhm.
sets him apart. And
That's
I
what I
think
hear. The sum makes him the best. It's not the one thing.
I think he was just such a raw talent.
Mhm.
And you put on West Side Story medley, and I
Oh
saw
my
him live,
God, beautiful.
and he played Birdland, and I was just like, wow, like God touched
Mhm.
him. And again, you can see other drummers emulate and do play musically and all that, but Buddy just had the whole package: technique, timing, musicality, and that wow factor. I
Right.
mean, he could do a basic single stroke like
Mhm.
nobody I've ever seen before. You learn the single stroke roll from day one, and he was like beyond 64th notes.
Right,
I
right.
mean, this was like not from this planet. And
Wow.
and again, you go back now, to this day. I mean, the late Neil Peart would
Mhm.
would analyze what Buddy did, and Max Weinberg would quote
Yes.
and write articles of what Buddy did. And matter of fact, Max Weinberg is quoted in Buddy Rich's recent book where they did a story on him. I'm actually, through social media, I've become friends with Kathy Rich,
Oh,
Buddy's
wow.
daughter.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool, and we have mutual
Yes.
friends.
Mhm.
So and also my mentor, Lee Musica.
Mhm.
Now, remember Mr. Musica and James Madison High?
Of course.
Okay, Mr. Musical, one of the best. His
Yes.
son Lee, we became friends after James Madison, and Lee went on to play for Tony Bennett, and he was his MD, music director, for over 10
Wow.
years. And I played with Lee at Swing 46. We traded
Mhm.
fours, and he was the one actually who he was in Buddy Rich's band for 5 years, and he recorded the famed Buddy Rich tapes where Buddy Rich
Yeah.
was cursing the band and the orchestra, and Lee and the trombone player cooked the tape recorder.
Of course. Why
And
not? I would.
that became known as the Buddy tapes.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting story.
So I know this is boring maybe to everybody watching us except and or listening to us, and I don't care. But I want to ask this question before I go, and definitely gonna have you back.
Sure.
What made Madison and where we grew up so special? Let me just paint this picture. Because you and I could walk in the world of Italian heritage, Irish heritage, Jewish heritage, African American heritage, Greek heritage, and understand it. And what a melting pot! What a blessing where we grew up and the school we went to. Right?
Agreed.
Talk about James Madison too. I mean, wild.
You hit the nail on the head. I think the diversity
Yeah.
at James Madison, and we were part of a golden era.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the alumni. I mean, Chris Rock.
Yep. Went to school with us.
Yes, and in our yearbook, he's listed on their camera shy, and
Yes.
he friended me on social media, and we chatted a little bit,
Right.
and that was cool. And then when I entered the band, the orchestra and dance band in Madison, the first thing they said to me, "Go, Tommy, there was a really hotshot drummer here. He just graduated. His name was Andrew Silverstein."
Mm-hmm.
Well, that turned out to be Andrew Dice
Andrew
Clay.
Dice Clay. Yep.
And he's actually a very good drummer. And also,
I did not know that.
Yeah, through social media we connected, and I actually met him, and we had a nice conversation at the King's Plaza Diner.
Oh.
Yeah, they shot a scene there, and Vasily called me. He goes, "Tommy, come by," and he didn't take pictures with everybody, but because of the conversation we had, we took a photo. I think I gave him an Elvis patch because he was an Elvis fan. Right. And he was very gracious, and he's a fine drummer, a fine drummer.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, Madison, we had a lot of gifted people, and yourself.
Oh, well, please. Yeah. Well, thank you. No, we did. And I mean, and you go down the line, we have Judge Judy, and we had Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we had Bonnie Glickman. I mean, and when we went, I'll tell you a quick
Carole
story.
King.
That's right.
Carole King. Yes.
Yeah.
And she, Laura recorded one of her tunes, "Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow?"
Right. Oh, did she?
Yes, where the band would just sit down and the grand piano would come out, and that would feature Laura, "Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow?" So when that happened, I'm like, James Madison.
I tell you, I once got a phone call. I shared this one time on the podcast previously. Real quick, I got a call from a newspaper in New York, one of the big three, and they said, "Hey, we're doing this piece on, on Chris Rock, and you went to school with him, right?" I said, "Yes, I did." "And what could you tell me about him?" I said, "Nothing. I'm not going to tell you, because that's how you and I grew up, right? It's nobody's business. That's us. We're just shut up. You know, if you were in, you're welcome. But you're not going to ask questions. I got nothing to tell you. I'm not going to let my words be spun.
Agreed. And the news media, yes, spending is a big part of it. So you say one thing and
yep.
Wait a minute, I didn't say that.
Yep, that's not what I said or whatever, and they just take a piece. But anyway, before I let you go, I want to ask one question. Will you come back? I want to talk about students. I want to talk about teaching. For our audience, if they need or want to get in touch with you or follow you, talk about that. Can they see you next?
Well, New Year's Eve, we're playing with the esteemed All-Star Band. It's a private affair in Monroe, New Jersey, 10-piece band. We rehearsed, we're set to go.
Nice.
I'm really excited about that. Couple of club dates, couple of weddings booked for the new year, which is like those calls are starting to come in. I'm putting the word out.
Sure.
We've been auditioning a lot for TV and film.
Good.
We have 2 or 3 actually films in development. Beautiful. One I can't discuss, 2 I discussed already.
Right.
So again, you hope those to take off. Continue teaching. We have our kids recital.
You got one going on there, my friend.
Yeah. This weekend's a big weekend. We have the kids recital, and they're set to go. So I'm going to be with my baton, conducting like Leonard Bernstein.
Beautiful. By the way, I can't wait for that movie. I can't wait for the Leonard Bernstein movie to come out. Right, that's supposed to come out soon.
It came out. It was fantastic. I saw a screening Q&A with Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper.
I loved it. It was a very good story, very educational, and he killed it.
I can't wait to see it because I heard it's amazing, and I love, as you know, I'm a film nut. I love it. And next time you are in Cape Cod, we got to have lunch and dinner on me, and we'll reminisce.
Very cool. That sounds great.
Be well, my friend. It's been great. Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye-bye.